Okay.
Okay. We're going to start the meeting. This buenas everybody. This special meeting is called to order. It's Wednesday, October 30th, 2024. It's now 2:14 p.m. Public notice was published in the Guam Daily Post on Wednesday, October 23, and Monday, October 28, 2024, and posted in the Government of Guam Public Notice Portal and the GALC website. Can we get a roll call? Would that be you, Kathy, or Joey? Kathy?
Yes, sir. At the moment, we have Chairman Ronald Eclavea,
Present.
Vice Chairman Ronald Laguarnia, Commissioner Angela Camacho,
Here.
Commissioner Anita Orlino,
Here.
Commissioner Luisa Westling.
Here.
You have 5 members present. You have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Jules Masi, Kathy.
You're welcome.
Okay, let's move down to administrative election of officers. So let's proceed.
When we get a nomination for chairman,
Okay.
please.
I will nominate Ron Eclavea for chairman, please.
I second that nomination.
Okay, so just Masi, everybody, for the confidence. Discussion?
I move to close the nomination, please, for chairmanship.
Okay, move to close. Shall we move to a vote? All in favor?
It
Aye.
needs to be seconded.
Oh, yeah. Seconded by Commissioner.
I second that motion to close the nominations for the position of chairman.
Okay, so we move on to voting. All in favor? Aye.
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 Any nays? No nays? So just Mas, everybody again for your vote of confidence. Thank you. We move on for vice chair.
I nominate Commissioner Ron Laguarnia for vice chairman position.
I second that.
I accept the nomination.
Okay,
Second.
it's seconded by Commissioner Orlino. Second? Discussion.
Move to close nominations for vice chairman position.
Okay, there's a movement to close the nomination. Seconded.
Second.
Okay, second. Let's move to vote. All in favor? Aye.
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 Thank you.
Motion
Thank you all
passes.
again.
Congratulations again, Vice Chair Laguarnia. Now we move to secretary.
I nominate Angela Camacho for the position of secretary.
I'll second the nomination.
Okay, we have a second nomination for Commissioner Camacho by Commissioner Westling, and it is seconded by Vice Chair Laguarnia. Discussion?
We lost her.
We're gonna need her to accept.
Right.
We're gonna need her to accept the nomination.
That's right.
Try to get her back on.
I'm trying, sir.
Okay. Send her a message.
Okay, we just got confirmation that
Yeah.
that she declined the nomination for secretary.
Okay, so then I would like to nominate Commissioner Orlino
I'll second that.
for the position.
I'll second the
Okay.
nomination.
Nomination for Commissioner Olino for secretary, and it's seconded by Vice Chair Laguatna. Discussion?
No discussion.
No discussion? Okay, so you accept Commissioner Orlino?
Accept at present. Thank you. Thank you, Louisa.
Okay,
Congratulations.
let's move
Thank
to a
you
vote.
for accepting it.
You.
Thank you.
Okay, we move to a vote. Oh, somebody
We
needs to
forgot to
close
close the
nomination.
nomination.
Yeah, I move to close the nomination.
Okay, move to close. Second,
And I second that.
by Commissioner Wesley. We move to a vote. All in favor, aye?
I,
Aye. That's three of us. Do we need four?
yeah,
Commissioner Lino, you need to vote?
Oh, I said aye.
yeah.
Okay,
she
so-
accepts.
Motion passes. Congratulations.
Thank
Right,
you.
Congratulations, everyone. So Juice Masi,
right.
Commissioner Wesley.
Welcome back, everybody.
Okay,
Welcome back.
let's move down to item 3. Assessment review of AT&T lease. Did everybody get the recent attachment that was addressed to the commission? In particular, it was addressed to me as the chairman from the governor?
Right. Yes.
Okay. Everybody had a chance to review that?
Yeah.
It doesn't
Yes.
seem that it's much different in perspective from what we got from the speaker. So can we get a discussion?
Yes. You know, Mr. Chairman, let's bring back the history of this. You know, when we did first find out about the lease that it apparently belonged to us because it was one of those situations where we just didn't know at the time, and it was through good faith of AT&T, and they notified us. And remember, so my question was, at the time we had a different director at the time, and I believe it was Director Ongoku.
Yeah.
Now, I wanted to find out because at that time we never I believe he met with them, and I'm not sure who else were involved, but I don't recall any sort of a back to somewhat the discussion of arranging an agreement with regards to the amounts. All I heard was the past due that they owed us. And somehow, I don't know if I'm mistaken, um, how that amount came to be. Can you please, Joey, freshen up our the situation then? Because we would have we always wanted to go for the highest and best use, but it seemed like that we were put on a spot that this was it. Can you refresh our memory on that one?
I'm sorry, who just spoke?
Yeah, I wanted to Mr. for Joey to refresh our memory on that matter back then.
So, just to clarify, Joey, can you just first address when we first realized that we had these properties?
So this was under the when we were still merged with Department of Land Management. So with Director Mike Borja, he was working with
Hmm.
Gita, and they were trying to negotiate the lease terms. And then change of administration, and then Mr. Ngoko took over.
So that's when we first noticed that we had those properties? Is that when we first realized that we had those properties?
So we didn't realize, well, it was dependent upon the survey of the property. So it was after we returned land back to, I believe it's the St. Nicholas estate, and then they surveyed what was returned, and then after that is when we were able to determine who owned, or I guess who owns the AT&T property. So, well, it wasn't until after that is when, or I think also along with a letter, I think they were getting requesting for a permit. That's when that kind of initiated us looking into it.
Okay, I see. So that was after we returned it to the St. Nicholas family, and then they surveyed it, and then land management was able to, with GALC, figure out that that property was returned to us, correct?
Not returned to us, but they decided not to include it as part of what was returned to them. So they went around AT&T and kind of, I guess, took out of the unsurveyed land to I guess meet or to what is the term? But anyways, they took lands from unsurveyed lands to, I guess, to complete their survey. So again, they went around AT&T, and then from there, that's where the, guess, Gov Guam or Ancestral Lands came in and said we'll claimed it as Crown lands now, or Ancestral Lands.
Okay, I see. Okay, so whatever the case may be, we have the properties in our inventory. It's in the land bank. So, with regard to Vice Chair's other question,
Yeah,
So
how did
if
that
you could-
number?
So the number came up, so I wasn't involved with
Hmm.
the negotiations, but it was a number that I believe Gita threw or proposed, and I think ITN also proposed an amount, and then there was a middle ground, and then that's where they came up with that amount. And then going forward, so that was there was two
Mhm.
payments, back rent, and then
Right.
then the going forward, the existing lease.
I would like to add that I do remember and I recall when we were going into negotiations with AT&T at the time, and I remember that they gave an initial offer, but it was rejected, and then we ended up Guido and Gita could correct me on this, ended up doing some comparables. And then that's how we ended up coming with that particular settlement number. Is that correct, Gita?
Mr. Chairman, essentially that is correct. I was involved in the negotiations with Diego from Gita. And representing the Attorney General's office was legal counsel Nick Toth at the time. If I'm not mistaken, AT&T proposed over $1 million for the settlement. Gita countered with over $5 million. All of this was presented to the commission at the time. We finally settled on, I think it was over $4 million was what the settlement price was. And then we negotiated, after we did the settlement, we negotiated the lease. We came up with different values. There was an appraisal that was done, essentially on the building. And that's how we arrived at the rent that they are currently being charged. This was all approved by the commission. We executed the lease, which was only for 5 years, because any lease that was longer required legislative approval. That lease was sent to the legislature for its approval. They passed the lease, the governor vetoed it and vetoed the bill, and that's where we are now.
Okay, Vice Chair, do you have any follow-up? I think he stepped out for a minute. You have any follow-up, Vice Chair? Okay, he got his headphones back. Vice Chair, you have any follow-up with Gita?
Yeah, thank you for that, Mike, and that's good information for the others who are not unaware of that matter, so thank you. So moving forward now. That was an appraisal done, right, Mike?
Yes, there was an appraisal done during the time that we were negotiating. And that's how we arrived at,
Right,
that's how we arrived at the value that is in the current lease.
of the building. Now, what is
Yes.
being questioned with us now is the cable lines and the operations of that with regards to that matter. That's what we're okay, that's let's move now. What is the next step?
Mr. Vice Chair, no, so we're not dealing with the cable line still. We're just the building itself.
Okay.
The building and the land.
Is that what the governor's letter indicated?
The governor's letter indicated to do another assessment on the contract, to do a proper evaluation on the especially the type of business that they're doing. They're not necessarily with the cables, but that's would be in line with in line too with what the speaker is asking, I would think. So that would involve I believe a specialized appraiser. I don't think any local appraiser, although I could be wrong. So we were supposed to, if the governor had signed the bill, we would have within that 5-year extension, we could have taken our time to get the specialized appraisal done and evaluation on what would be fair, given the type of business that they are doing. So I think they want to tie in the type of business they are doing with the land, with the lease, not just comparables is the way I look at it. Otherwise, they would have vetoed the bill, or they wouldn't have come up with another bill. They would have just approved the extension of the last lease. So that's where we're at. We're gonna do a proper evaluation, appraisal, given the business, the type of business that's going on with the property. That's how I look at it, and that's how I see it. I'd like to, if anybody wants to give their other take on it, Commissioner Arlino, Commissioner Westling.
Commissioner Westling here, in reading the governor's letter, she does state here that it seems that she feels that the appraisal, that the property needs to be reevaluated for current market value. As she indicates in her letter that she feels that that the appraisal market value has possibly increased due in part to the military buildup and foreseeable future. I'm not sure that she's looking at what income is being generated from the use of the building. But it's more just from a real estate market value. And that whatever valuation was used for this is now outdated, and that she wants to see another updated one on market value of the property.
Okay,
Just to add to that, regarding the legislature and the speaker, it's her take is definitely differs in a way that takes into account the business. So we have the governor's letter or the veto, and then we have the speakers, the legislature's take on it. That given there's their recent, I believe, Joey and Kathy, they had a similar CLTC valuation with regard to that type of service. I know theirs is dealing with submerged lands, but I think they're of the opinion that although this is not submerged property with the cables, that the business should be taken into account with that. And that's where the proper valuation would come into play, is how they're seeing it. Otherwise, they would have just asked for an updated property appraisal on the property. And they could have just approved the previous lease maybe, and with an amended criteria that we reevaluate the property, per se. That's how you would take the governor's take on it. So, you have anything else to add? How about Mr. Weston?
No, I don't have anything else to add at this time. Only
Okay,
that
Commissioner Lino. I'm sorry. Okay, Commissioner Lino. You're on mute. You're on mute. You're on mute.
I'm just gonna ask, I'm gonna direct Commissioner Orlino here. I wanna direct this to Joey. Is there any present appraisal or because I think the governor's very concerned that the new lease of AT&T should reflect the current market value of the cable landing station property. We own the building. Who owns where the cable goes out or whatever? Correct me if I'm wrong. Is it Ancestral or just the building?
We own just the building. and the land. That's all.
Right, where the building sits,
Yes,
not where the cable will set on. Further out, whatever, because I've never seen it. I like to see it.
yeah, there's the map that is attached to the lease. And I have Elizabeth from AT&T. She's asking if she could chime in. Would that be okay, Mr. Chair?
I don't see any problem with that. Legal counsel?
No, that's fine if you want to recognize
Yes.
her.
Sure. Okay.
Okay, all right. You can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay, hi. My name is Elizabeth Songville, Director of External Affairs for AT&T. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. I didn't come on planning to speak, but just wanted to chime in and make sure the commission was aware of a few things that was inserted into the bill that was passed by the legislature. I just wanted to.
Excuse me, may you turn on your camera, please?
Sure.
Could you?
I didn't
Thank
prepare
you.
to. Hi, can you see me okay?
Yes.
Buenas.
Great. I just wanted to point out a couple of things that was included in a substitute amendment into the bill that was passed by the legislature. Just wanted to make sure the commission was aware. I understand the rent that was agreed to for the first 5 years. But for the next 5 years that was approved by the legislature, our rent is going up about 48%. And we agreed to pay that while a fair market value assessment was being done. So that is something that we did discuss with GALC and Gita that we would do right away. Because we understand that it is important that a fair market value assessment be done, and we do pay whatever that market assessment is. And so I just wanted to make sure that the commission was aware of that recent change, and that would be something new in the next term that was agreed by the legislature. Just wanted to note that. Thank you for the opportunity to chime in.
Well, thank you, and it's a pleasure to meet with you. I was aware of that. I believe our vice chair was aware of that, but I'm not sure. Are the rest of the board members aware that? Okay, that was in the bill that was submitted by the legislature to the governor. They would increase, like she said, about over 40%, 45% over the lease. And while we are determining a proper valuation of the lease terms, so during those 5 years, according to the bill, we would probably get a proper secure a proper evaluator, appraiser, and then with the findings, if it's more, they would compensate the ancestral lands with the difference. But if it's less, then we would have to recompensate AT&T with the difference. So that was agreed upon. However, the governor, of course, vetoed that bill. So here we are today. I'm not sure if I know that the lease expired September 30th, correct?
Yes, sir.
So we would most likely probably need to do a month to month, maybe, while we are working on this to resolving the issues that we have right now. So could I get our legal counsel to chime in, and then maybe Gita?
Sure. Just to kind of try and summarize the entire situation. As the chairman indicated, the AT&T's lease for this property has expired. They are what lawyers call a holdover tenant. And in theory, the commission could move to evict AT&T off the property. Although for the viewing public, I'm comfortable in saying that nobody really wants to move AT&T off this particular property. the next thing you should know is about the sort of the integration of the business and the real estate. What are the cables worth? How does all of that interact? Is perhaps one way to think about this is wetland and dry land. Guam has passed a law on submerged on the opportunity and the price for businesses to land cables on Guam. And generally speaking, that's a line of business that is the law gives to the Chamorro Land Trust. In chatting with Gita, in this unique particular situation, it's unclear at this moment whether the submerged lands associated with the landing of these particular cables have in fact been returned to the government of Guam, and where ownership of the submerged lands for this particular associated with this particular property, where ownership of those is going to go. But just so you all have awareness, because there are several other cables that land on Guam. And the legislature has simply made it simple and straightforward. Whenever you land a cable on Guam, the operator pays a landing fee of $100,000. That's a one-time fee. And then annually, they pay an additional lease price, I guess you would call it, for keeping the cable there, for utilization of Guam's submerged lands. The first year's lease is simply $100,000, and all these numbers are set out in statute. So there's no dickering, there's no negotiating. First year is $100,000, and then the price ticks up. Off the top of my head, I think it was $2,500 a year out into the future. So the government of Guam sort of makes its money off the opportunity for companies like AT&T to land cables on Guam through cable landing fees and through charging companies for the continuing right to make use of those submerged lands. Here, we're talking about dry land, and that's on the one hand that has nothing to do with the cable, and really you should think about this as this particular piece of property is no different than any other piece of commercial property in the commission's inventory. A one way in which to think about valuing the particular piece of property is if AT&T were gone and we simply put up a sign on the property that said for lease, how much would somebody pay to lease the land and the building on the property? And the value of the property would be a function of whatever the market lease price is for this particular piece of property in its particular location that any other user might take advantage of. There are other ways to put a valuation on this property. That being said, the rule of thumb that the government of Guam has established is that the minimum lease price the government expects to get for a piece of commercial property owned and managed by any of its agencies is 10% of the fair market value of the property. So just to make up a number, if an appraiser would come back and say this particular piece of property is worth $1 million, then our opening lease negotiation number with AT&T or whomever would be $100,000 a year, 10% of $1 million. Now the 10% is a rule of thumb. It's not certainly the speaker and the governor and everybody else who oversees Guam's land inventory hopes we can get more. But that's 10% of the fair market value is the rule of thumb. So in this particular instance, there are a couple things we have to do. One is to decide, do we want to put together some type of short month-to-month agreement with AT&T, where if AT&T was willing, perhaps we take the monthly rent that they would have been paying if the governor signed the bill, and we all decide that that's the right month-to-month rent for AT&T to pay while we get the appraisal done and while we dicker over the pricing of a long-term lease, and we'll have to go back to the legislature and go back to the governor with a longer-term lease, because I'm absolutely confident AT&T will want something longer than 5 years on this particular piece of property. And like the lease that exists now, and like the bill that the legislature passed says, there was always an expectation we were going to have to revalue the property. And so there was always an understanding of, well, we'll start now with a particular rent payment, but we all understand we're going to negotiate a final rent payment, and then we'll make the final rent payment retroactive to the first day of the lease, and then we'll settle up between us if it's higher and lower, who owes what to whom, looking back to the 1st of October of 2024. Do we want to go to the effort now to try and put a month-to-month arrangement in place with AT&T so that the rent keeps coming, or the other option would be to simply lay that question aside with the understanding that when we have an appraisal, when we are ready to formally negotiate it, we're going to negotiate a final lease. Eventually, we'll get something past the legislature, signed by the governor, but that lease is going to be retroactive to October 1, 2024. And, however long that takes, we'll expect AT&T to write us a lump sum check from whenever we have the legal authority to sign a lease retroactive to October 1, 2024. So we've got to sort that question out, and then separately we have to sort out the question that actually is not much to sort out. It's really the commission simply needs to give direction to GITA to go hire on the commission's behalf an appropriate appraiser to get going on appraising this property. And the challenge here is, who is the appropriate appraiser? Because this is a very unique property. It's a one-of-one property, and it's not going to be it's not an office building, it's not a shopping center, it's not a gas station, it's not a fast food restaurant. Those are all easy to value. This is a one-of-one property, so the appraiser is going to have to think about what's the right mathematical methodology to approach this particular piece of property. Happy to take any questions.
Very good. Thank you for that explanation there, Attorney. And Mr. Chairman,
Vice Chair?
so I guess we should just move forward now and allow our partners to
Well, Vice
work.
Chair, I have a quick
Okay, go ahead.
yeah, real quick. Let's see. Well, there's a few options we can do based upon the information received and our legal counsel. It looks like, I mean, the other option is maybe the last option, but the other option is RFPing the property while we do a month-to-month with Gita, I mean with AT&T on agreed terms. And then that probably gets us within the ballpark of what is fair market value, because they would have to come in and put in a a bid that would be fair, and they want to win the bid. The other scenario I'm looking at is basically, I'm more inclined to do is continue with the higher lease payments that they agreed to do in the bill, do a month to month, and move with the valuation determination, the proper value determination. Get Gita to acquire the proper appraiser, and then come to terms with that. So, any thoughts on that?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman, if it's the commission's preference to want to, go down the road of a full-blown RFP and see, who else is out there and what other options might exist. Setting aside the idea that somebody else might have a completely different use for this particular piece of real estate, there are certainly a number of other international cable companies that operate on Guam, and who knows what interest they may have in taking on this facility.
Yeah, the risk is, it might be lower, but we're going into the controversy is the proper fair market value or fair lease, given all the criteria that's given with the business. So I was just thinking that will get us near or close to the ballpark of what we're looking for. Although I'm leaning towards just more inclined to do a month to month with the higher terms, and then get Gita to do the valuation and then come to an agreement there. Similar to what the governor's asking and what the legislature is asking. Gita, Mike?
Mr. Chair, we have discussed that within Gita, and we're inclined to agree with you that we place the commission place AT&T on a month-to-month lease while we go out with an RFP as requested by the governor to select an appraiser to develop the fair market value of the property. Once the appraisal is done, then we would be negotiating two items: the rent for the property and consideration over the special nature of the use, as Attorney Miller has pointed out. AT&T earlier agreed that there would be some compensation because of the uniqueness of this property and the fact that the submerged property in which the cables traverse is not currently owned by the government of Guam or by the commission. So we agree that we place them on a month-to-month and conduct the appraisal. Regarding the month-to-month, though, the lease agreement currently provides that if there's any holding over, that it be 20% more than the current rent, or as Attorney Miller has suggested, we could ask for the $34,000 per month that the legislature wanted to impose. So, at 20%, the rent would be $27,500 per month, whereas the legislature wanted to go with 34. So I think the choice would be the commission, obviously subject to AT&T's approval, but the lease agreement currently says that month to month, 20% above the current rent. But we all know that the legislature wanted to charge a higher rent, with the caveat that if the appraisal came in lower, then we would adjust the rent accordingly, taking into account the overpayments made by AT&T.
Mike, is that in line with the 48% that Ms. Songviling just brought up? Because that was an agreement that it would have gone up 48%.
The rent that the legislature included in the bill was 408,000 a year. AT&T is currently paying 275,000. So I assume AT&T's 48% came from that. The legislature wanted to.
I'm inclined to just stick with that.
That's the commission's call.
Yeah. I mean, and while we move on that, and this, if that's the option.
The option is to go month to month.
Well,
And we go out
with the month to month, but with that,
Yes.
that 48% increase.
Sure.
Ms. Songville, you had your hands up?
Yes, I just wanted to chime in. That 48% increase we agreed to on the condition that the lease would be extended. I think we would have to take the conversation back internally if we do not receive an extension and we're talking about going month to month. I think that's a different conversation
I see.
that we would have
Well,
to take back. So I wanted to mention.
The month to month would be until such time that we receive the appraisal, and then we would negotiate with AT&T for a longer term lease, which eventually would have to be submitted to the legislature for their approval. So it's not just month to month and that's it. It's month to month, with the end result hopefully being a long-term lease. For
Waiting.
AT&T.
Yeah, exactly. There's a difference.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, this is Shelby Jackson. I'm also with AT&T. The language in the bill that was vetoed essentially said that we would have a lease.
Can you put on your
Turn on your camera,
please?
Sure, one
your
moment.
camera.
Your name is Shelby Jackson? Oh, Shelby Jackson.
Yes.
Okay. Buenas, welcome.
Thank you. All right, I think my camera's on now.
There you are. You're on. You're on.
Okay. The language in the lease that was vetoed essentially established the lease with us paying the 48% increase, which is based on the existing 275 compared to the 408,000 that's in that the legislature established. It's our intent that we would, as was stated in the bill, that we would be paying based on that 408,000 until such time that a fair market value is established. So I think the only nuance that we're looking at here is that because of the veto, there's not an established lease, and instead we're continuing to exist under the terms of the existing lease, but it would be our intent to continue to pay at the 408,000 a year. I think that's 34,000 a month. I forget what the monthly number is. But to continue to pay monthly based on that 408,000 number until the fair market value is done. So I think we're close in terms of language, in terms of trying to understand between us what the next step and what the approach is.
It looks like it would address the issues with the legislature and the governor, in my view. That's how we're looking at it. At the same time, we're still thinking to the highest and best use for the GALC.
Okay. Like I say,
and if it's lower, you're still gonna get the difference back.
No, agreed. And I think we're all in agreement on that. I'm trying to make sure we don't get ourselves caught up in splitting a little bit of hairs here.
I understand.
I think the only differentiation that we're dealing with is that if the bill had been approved, we would go through a fair market value assessment while we pay the 408,000 a year and then adjust to that value. With the bill being vetoed, I think we're essentially continuing under the existing lease or terms of the existing lease, with the exception that we're still paying at the 408,000 while we're waiting for the fair market value to be done. Like I think either way, the next step forward is the same. It's just probably a legal definition of what is the lease we're under, right?
Well, because the lease actually expired.
Right.
So yeah, it's actually expired on the 30th. So in essence, though, I don't see a difference though. It looks like it's still probably the same, conditions. It's just that the governor would be, it would satisfy the governor's concern about fair market and the highest and best use, and also the legislature's concern. And then,
Sure.
yeah, because, initially Ancestral Lands just wanted them to approve it.
Right.
We stood by what we agreed upon.
Agreed. And I
Okay.
think where we collectively gotten tripped up is that, because I think it says in the lease that after 5 years, we would do a fair market value assessment.
See, in the end,
Which we
we're
didn't
looking-
do, which has probably tripped us collectively up a little bit. So now we need to do that step.
See, we're
and then-
looking to at the end result would be a long-term lease, not the 5 years. We're
Agreed.
looking at giving you a long-term lease.
Agreed.
Yeah, so that's where we're at. So we're trying
Yeah.
to satisfy all parties, and including our fiduciary duty to the trust.
Sure.
Legal counsel, you want to touch in on what we just brought up there?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a discussion that, lawyers thoroughly enjoy, and probably nobody else. But in that month-to-month agreement, we would indicate that the whatever you want to call it, the old lease, the existing lease, in fact, has expired and is terminated. However, we all agree to use all the terms and conditions, and we're not going to retype any of those terms and conditions in a brand new month-to-month lease. The only change really being that the month-to-month rent is $408,000 divided by 12.
Okay, understood. Very good. So, are we all on the same page?
Just, can I,
Okay, Mike?
just one point of clarification. The legislation that was vetoed by the governor said 408,000 a year in rent. But if the appraisal was lower, then we would credit AT&T's future rent payments.
Correct.
In the month-to-month, are we following the same thing, or is the 408 just a flat rent, and regardless of what the appraisal is? Are we still following what the legislation had, or are we just saying rent is 408 per year divided by 12?
That's a good question. I know what I would like to say, but legal, I'm going to go back to Mr. Miller, our legal counsel.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's there's what the commission wants, and then there's what AT&T wants. We have to all, everybody has to agree here. I think the generally speaking, the way the government of Guam addresses these commercial leases is it asks the agencies to go get an appraisal. It asks the agencies to, at a minimum, that the rent be 10% annual, that the annual rent be 10% of the fair market value of the property. But again, 10% is a minimum, is a rule of thumb. The commission is certainly free to ask for more, and AT&T is certainly free to say no. But I think I would certainly have no objection if, in the interest of us continuing down the road as friends and good faith negotiating partners, if we could certainly put in the month-to-month lease, and understanding that 408 divided by 12 is the month-to-month rent, but if in the final lease, whatever the final annual rent is, and whatever the final annual monthly rent is, if it's more or less, we all agree we will credit one another appropriately.
And how far back does that credit go if it's more?
October 1st, 2024.
Are you sure? Because I think the legislation that was vetoed goes farther back than that.
Well, I mean, I assume AT&T is current and paid in full on their existing lease.
Oh, I
The
see.
in-
Okay.
The
Oh, I see.
intent was to go back to October 1st, 2024, the beginning of the new term, the new 5-year term. That
Oh,
was
I see.
approved.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Joey?
So I believe we're supposed to follow the existing lease, which is expired. And I'm gonna share my screen, and it says right here, holding over, I'm not sure if you can see it. Holding over, if tenant shall remain in possession of the premises after the expiration or termination of this lease, such possession shall be on a month-to-month tenancy upon the terms and conditions of this lease as existed immediately prior to the expiration or termination of the term, except the rent shall increase by 20% over the prior period's rate. So I don't think we can do the 408. I think we have to follow this and just increase it at 20% in the meantime until we issue a new or until the RP is issued. Or a new
Actually, I
lease.
don't. Actually, that's not what our legal counsel just advised us that the lease is over on the 30th.
Yes, and there's a holding over now,
Yeah,
and
but
that's what I'm pointing to, the holding over.
he gave us the option of sending a letter to even terminate or to vacate the property. There's a difference.
It
That
it
was an
also,
option.
it also sounds like to me that we're in agreement that the rent would be 408, regardless
Yeah.
of what the existing lease says.
That's right.
So, I mean, we could amend that in the month to month, right? We could just
No,
set it at
I
408.
think, although Joey, you're right. I think this is a different scenario, and it's a different legal scenario that was outlined correctly by our legal counsel, and I think it's acknowledged by AT&T. Correct?
Correct.
Yes, they're correct on it. So we can move forward with those conditions on a month to month. Correct?
If that's the commit, we'll
If
need
I
a,
may
we'll
say,
need a,
Joey, yeah.
motion we'll need a motion and a second and a vote from the commission as to how to direct Gita to negotiate a month-to-month lease, and Gita will have to get AT&T's agreement on that lease.
So is it okay for us to get the opinion of AT&T at this time? I mean, although
Sure.
I'm nodding their heads, they're nodding their heads, but otherwise we're just spinning our wheels, giving a motion to Gita.
I mean, nobody's legally obligating themselves one another at this moment, so we all understand that. But we can have whatever dialogue you'd like to have, Mr. Chairman.
So I'll just, outright state for AT&T that AT&T's in agreement that we're essentially in a month-to-month holdover based on the rent of $408,000 a year, which is consistent with the legislation, though it was vetoed, with the intent that a fair market valuation would get done and that we would then true up the rent retroactive to October 1st, whichever way that number goes, as a new lease is done based on that fair market.
Okay, very, very good. So we're in agreement, legal counsel agreement. Mike, Gita, Mike, we're understood where to move?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good.
We'll just need the commission to vote to direct Gita down that road.
Discussion first. We have any input from our commissioners? Okay, Commissioner Wessing. Oops, okay.
Louisa Westling, Commissioner Westling here. Oh. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're clear.
Okay, I just want to comment, Joey Leon Barrow, that Joey, you were very correct in pointing out the terms of the now expired lease agreement regarding the holding over terms. But in this case, you can see that you have parties that are willing to make amendments to that. So the mere fact that they are willing to make the amendments, allows the commission and AT&T to have that discussion. But you were very correct in stating what the holding over period stated and what the escalation was. Okay, I just wanted to add that.
I second that. Sure. Sejus Masejui. Okay, any other discussions? Vice Chair, Commissioner Lino?
Yeah, I'm
Okay, we're
good
good to go.
with the discussion.
Okay,
yes.
okay, we need a motion on the floor.
No, not everyone at once, but I guess I'll move with the conditions that were specified with the agreement with the AT&T and all parties involved with our legal and Gita on that matter. And if someone can state it for the record, proceed, please.
Okay, so basically our Vice Chair is making the motion to approve what we just agreed upon, the conditions with month-to-month lease agreement with AT&T based on the the right number was 408,000
Right.
per year, pending the terms of the appraisal and evaluation of the fair market value of our of the business and of the land. That's basically what it is. Correct?
Correct. And yeah, with the agreement of the retro with the event that is to.
Right.
affect
The
it.
conditions, yeah,
You know-
Gita understands those conditions would be in place, correct?
Correct.
It's in place. Right?
Okay. Yes, Gita will make sure the terms that we discussed would it's pretty similar to the bill that was that the legislature has. So could we get a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, seconded by Commissioner Wesley. Discussion? No discussion. Okay, let's do an individual vote on this. Vice Chair Laguardia,
Aye.
Commissioner Lino,
I agree.
Secretary, Commissioner Wesley,
Agree.
and I agree. Did I miss anybody?
No.
Okay. Kathy, Joey, motion passes. I'd like to thank everybody for being here. AT&T. Okay, Mike.
Mr. Chair, one other point. The governor's letter says to do an RFP to hire an appraiser. The lease agreement currently says that the appraiser is to be selected by both AT&T and the commission. But the lease doesn't specify how we go about this, selecting an appraiser. Are we to go with an RFP to get an appraiser? The lease also says that the commission and AT&T split the cost of that appraisal. So is the commission also directing us to issue an RFP for an appraiser, and then based on the lease agreement, we have to both AT&T and the commission both have to agree with that appraiser and then share the cost?
Well, our legal counsel can weigh in on this regarding the appraiser, the specialized appraiser that we need to hire, and how AT&T and GALC would participate in that process.
Again, our perspective is that the terms and conditions of the existing lease are gone.
Right.
That being said, those existing terms also sort of represent a handshake understanding between the commission and AT&T, how we intend to move forward. Perhaps the most appropriate path to go down is for the commission to direct GITA to put together an RFP for an appraiser, for AT&T to offer, to suggest any appraisal firms they might want to. And GITA will make sure that those appraisal firms get the copy of the RFP, and hopefully those appraisal firms respond to the RFP. And yeah, I mean, when at the end of the day, we all as the commission and AT&T have to agree on a lease price and the remainder of the lease terms. So whenever the commission has an appraiser tentatively hired, it would probably make sense to ask AT&T if they have any objections, because if they just don't like the appraiser we're thinking of hiring, then AT&T is probably going to reject any lease amount that is based on that appraiser's calculation. So we can certainly work together, the commission and AT&T and GITA, on who this appraiser is. But we're the government. We have to do these things pursuant to procurement rules. So step one is for the commission to direct GITA to get going on procuring an appraiser.
Okay, very good. But one of the concerns that was addressed by the legislature is a qualified type specialized appraiser, not just the norm appraisers, I guess, that we have. I'm not sure if we do have someone that qualifies with that out here. If we do, then we can go with that. But that's one of their concerns. Otherwise, we could have just kept the same criteria as that GITA used in the last appraisal they've done. So I'd like to address the governor's concerns, of course, and the legislature's concern with that. And they were particular in making sure we have it properly appraised by a qualified appraiser for this type of situation we're in right now. So let's go ahead and
Mr. Chairman, my suggestion would be, since AT&T does this business on a worldwide basis, and I have no doubt that AT&T is getting similar properties appraised for their own benefit, around the world. At a minimum, AT&T hopefully can offer some suggestions to GITA as to firms that they have confidence in, and GITA can make sure that those firms get a copy of the RFP, and hopefully those firms will give us a proposal. But at the end of the day, we're going to choose whoever we want to choose pursuant to our procurement criteria.
Just a question on that. One, I don't know if we have a list of said appraisers. That's something we'll have to check. But if we did, none of them would be on Guam. So would there be a concern that the appraiser should be someone who understands the intricacies of Guam and its land and any other considerations that might be appropriate?
Yeah, we were of the mindset somewhat that we probably have to be somebody off some appraiser that's not from here. We were thinking that. Now, of course, you're thinking it probably should be somebody from here, but that's what we did the last time. But it doesn't seem to qualify. It didn't seem to qualify.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, if I can chime in, I know from conversations, for example, I've had with the speaker, the thought process is these types of facilities are more akin to data centers that you would find on the mainland, and you don't necessarily appraise them as if somebody were going to run a restaurant or a gas station.
Yeah, that's how I took it.
Piece of property.
Yeah.
Sure.
Right.
There's some, and this is, I guess this is where the question of specialization comes in, because I'm not sure a straight data center appraisal applies. It's probably closer to what we call a central office. which is more a telecom office. Like, but again, to your point, it's not a restaurant, it's not a gas station, it's not a hotel. So we'll have to look internally if we have a list of appraisers that we would use for such a purpose, and certainly we could provide them if we do.
But
Mr. Chairman,
I'm sorry, it is a data center though, correct?
No,
No?
no. So a data center, generically speaking, a data center has lots of servers and is often a place where you have co-tenants interconnecting their data center traffic and they basically consume a lot of power. And this is more, there are not servers doing data center functions. This is more what we refer to as transport. So this is the ability to take the bits coming, I'm going to oversimplify, the bits coming out of the ocean and hand them off to somebody who takes them out of the cable station, probably to a data center. So, a Google or a GTA or Docomo has data centers, but those are separate buildings from the cable station. That's more like I make general references that were a little bit more like an airport, because things come in and they go out, but we don't actually deal with what's in the boxes.
Okay, before you go, what was the term you just used? The description, what was it? A traffic? What did you say?
We're a transport location.
Transport location.
Yeah. So it's an interconnect between the cable and the local networks on Guam, GTA, Docomo, Pacific Data Systems, etc. Right? They'll all have data centers or offices where they take that traffic and therefore glean the value out of that traffic. We're sort of an interconnect point, so it's a little different than a data center.
Interconnect point. Okay, Mike, you have your hands up.
I think, if we could get a list of prospective appraisers, that would be great. We would send a copy of the advertisement for the RFP to them. But really what we need is a scope of work. I mean, if you could supply us with a scope of work that's used elsewhere, where we can make sure that we let everybody, all the appraisers, know what the commission is requiring for this appraisal, because we would need to be consistent with everybody. So if you were to give us a scope of work that takes into account the unique characteristics and use of this property, then we would incorporate that scope of work and make it available to everybody, including off island, including appraisers on Guam, but we would make it available to everybody. So the scope of work needs to be consistent, and if you could provide us with a scope, we would really appreciate that.
So I will take that back to our real estate folks who may have I'm in operations. My job is not assessing property values.
Yeah,
my job is keeping networks operating. But to that point, I will take it back to our real estate and our support teams to see if they can provide a list of appraisers and some kind of a scope of work to be used. We're happy to provide whatever detail we can to sort of facilitate this process. So
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Whoa, we got echo. Where we at? I guess we're Gita. We're set to go.
Yes, sir.
I guess we'll fine tune everything that needs to be done in the coming days, and then maybe we can address it on our next meeting. I know you got some work to do. I'm getting a lag. Can anybody, hello?
Hello?
Okay,
Hello?
let's move forward.
Okay, that's it. I guess we're good to go. Any further questions?
I have to go pick up Carrie's.
Okay, we're about to adjourn, so I would like to thank everybody for coming and being in this very important meeting. Thank you, Vice Chair, Commissioner, our new Secretary, Commissioner Wesley, Dios Masi, our staff. Gita, thank you very much, and AT&T, just Masi for being here.
Yes, yes, I would like to thank
Absolutely.
you, everybody,
Legal counsel,
Elizabeth
thank
and
you. So
Shelby.
a motion to adjourn?
Well, let's allow us to congratulate our new officers. And welcome
Congratulations, everybody, again.
back to this
Thanks for your
Congratulations.
vote of confidence again.
Yeah.
Mr.
Yes,
Chairman,
congratulations.
Thank you.
Do the new officers have documents that need to get signed?
Yes, we do. So we'll be in to Kathy or Joey, get those documents ready, and we'll be in to sign those documents as soon as they're ready. I know they're probably
yes.
considering.
Yes, sir.
Okay, just let us know. Give us a text or a message, and we'll come down and sign those documents. Thank you,
Yes,
legal
sir.
counsel, for that. Gita, so just Masi again, everybody.
Great
Thank you.
meeting. Good
And,
meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, and
Time.
our staff too.
Time.
GALC. Take care. This meeting,
Adjourn
oh,
your
wait,
time.
we need a motion to
Time.
adjourn.
Yes,
Motion to adjourn.
I motion to adjourn this
Okay,
meeting.
motion to adjourn.
Second.
This meeting is adjourned. It's
Okay, adios,
3:29. Just Masi, everybody. Thank you.
At
Adios.
3:29.
Adios.
3:29.
Thank you.